Major Spoilers podcast covers news, reviews, and of course, spoilers, and goes into details about the topics discussed. So if you haven't read, listened, or watched the items we talk about, you might want to come back later.
I'm Matthew.
I'm Rodrigo.
And I'm Steven, and you're listening to the Major Spoilers podcast, the podcast for pop culture and comic fans.
In this corner, towering at 6'2", clad in white trunks adorned with a striking red stripe, he is none other than the Louisville Slugger, the one and only greatest. He is Muhammad Ali, and facing him, 6'4", dressed in red trunks that the puerile internet wags delight in deriding, he is the Metropolis Marvel, the indomitable Man of Steel. He is Superman. If ever a greater pair of titans squared off in a more colossal conflict, this reporter has yet to see it, but these valiant champions are granted their moment in the red sun, thanks to the Major Spoilers podcast, a years-long study in moppishness, and it's on the air.
Welcome to issue 1133 of the Major Spoilers podcast. Thank you for downloading and joining us this week. Rodrigo, do you know who Howard Cosell is?
I do. I am probably just
the last person to know.
You are the last generation.
Just young enough to get the reference, old enough to get the young enough to get the reference, old enough to it works both ways actually, depending on who I'm talking to. But yes, I do remember. I don't know who that is.
Okay, all right,
yeah,
because this is going to be real interesting because we will be talking about a comic book that came out in a very specific point in time this week. It's the Superman versus Muhammad Ali. It is very much a 1978 comic book. We'll be talking about that a little bit later in the show. If you're wondering to know, hey, are you guys going to go see that Superman movie that opens this week? We're reviewing a Superman comic. That's really weird. You can find the answer to that if you go over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/Major Spoilers, and get in on the Major Spoilers podcast pre-show, where we talk about reasons why we may or may not be going to see that movie this weekend. And I guarantee you, for those of us who are not going, it has nothing to do with wokeness. So there you go.
That's right, because we're going to be asleep.
If you were hoping that we were going to go off on wokeness and Superman being woke, have you never listened to this show? Have you never read a Superman comic?
You've never read a Superman comic? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. In the meantime, though, we do have some comic book reviews just for you. Let us take a look at last week. There was finally, Captain America gets his own comic book as Marvel releases Captain America #1 for the first time in 80 years of the character's history. He gets his own comic.
More than that, 1941 to 2025. That's 85 years, I think. So you may say to yourself, who is this? No, I'm sorry, that's David Byrne. So you may ask yourself, why in the year 2025 are we getting a new Captain America comic book? And I feel like the answer is the same as the words that I'm going to say as I begin to introduce the creative team, and that is Chip Zdarsky, with art by Valerio Schiti, rather, excuse me. This is just Chip jumping in. If you remember a few years ago when Chip took over Batman and everything was like, this is where the story starts. Whatever you were reading last month, that's done now. This is where the story starts, and this is how the story starts, and just buckle in for the ride and you'll be fine. This story takes place in two eras. I don't know really for sure when any of them are. One is at some point after September of 2001, and the other is at some point a week after Captain America is released from the ice by the Avengers. Now, remember, that initially happened in 1964. In this story, it happens at a time where Captain America, brand new out of the ice, is able to hear an advertisement for Tony Stark's new mobile phone and how the Stark phone is going to change the whole world. But it opens with one of the better Captain America moments I've seen in, recent history. I'm going to say the last 20 years. But to explain that, you have to ask yourself, so what are you going to do with the Captain America story in 2025? We have a criminal at large. He seems to be wearing explosives. Captain America, right out of the ice, has no idea what he's doing. A week ago, it was 1944. He's not sure about this world. At one point, he literally says, do they still have God in this world? And is he listening to me? But the moment comes where the man is threatening to destroy the United Nations, wandering around with explosives, and Captain America walks up to him and he says, you're military. The guy's like, I was. And then Captain America explains how he knows and what he did and how he was a captain in the commandos in World War II. And literally, the lieutenant is like, okay, he's like, from your superior officer, stand down. And it's just a very subtle, quiet, beautiful moment. It plays with Captain America as a military man, but it does it in a way that also isn't, what's the word I'm looking for? Offensive, swaggery, over the top, pointing at your forehead and saying, do you think this stands for Europe? It's really, really well done. And I feel like it combines sort of a modern Captain America burn with more of a Silver Age joint, which honestly, that's kind of the sweet spot for Zdarsky for me. In the rest of the issue, we find out interesting bits of backstory. We find out where things are kind of taking place and who Captain America might be working with on his first mission out of an ice cube, and how Mr. Fantastic, of all people, has always carried his Captain America action figure that he got when he was a little kid. And Captain America's like, so they sell these dolls of Bucky too? And God love him, Reed's like, they call them action figures, sir. Like, yes, you tell him, Reed Richards. Gosh, I can see Pedro Pascal saying that right now. But it does have, as you would expect, some sort of horrifying things happening in a different space. Someone who's likely going to be the villain. It does have an interesting kind of alternate Captain America suit, which I'm absolutely in love with. I don't know if it's a stealth costume or what. But it also has something that I feel like is very important in the modern universe, because this is going to be telling us this first time that Captain America actually came face to face with Victor Von Doom. Again, don't know when it happens. I don't think that's important necessarily, except in as much as, as a reader, I kind of want to know what am I dealing with when I see these things? Where does it happen? But I'm also willing, just based on the strength of this issue, the beautiful, beautiful art, amazing coloring. I got to tell you, I'm surprised, because so many times when you have a story that's trying to be realistic, you get the whole world is brown, we'll just deal with it. This avoids that. Your main character's wearing red, white, and blue. You need to have some color. But the way that they pull it off really works for me. And it is a traditional costume with the wings on the head. It is stripes on the belly button. It is corsair boots and big pirate gloves. And I could not be happier because, classic Captain America. Also, Mark II Iron Man suit, big pointy head things on it. Don't know why. Makes me happy. Valerio Schiti is a genius. Full stop. I honestly don't know if Valerio is a man or a woman. I want to say a man. Either way, doesn't matter. Excellent. You are a wonderful artist. I will buy you a cup of coffee if you're ever in Topeka. I can't keep telling Steven that, but he never stops.
I don't drink coffee.
In any case, 4.5 slices of meatloaf and a nice big coffee on the side for Captain America. I think it's volume 8, number 1 from 2025. Honestly, if you've been avoiding Captain America, as I have, because it's hard to do this character in certain political climates, this may be kind of a resolution for you. This kind of takes it out of the here and now. It can play with modern bits and pieces, but it can also give you something more kind of Silver Agey that I really appreciate without feeling retro. So definitely worth the price of admission here.
All right, very cool. Captain America #1 out last week from Marvel Comics. Out this week from Oni Press, Rick and Morty versus the Universe. Rick and Morty have done a couple of event type stuff in the past, where it's like Rick and Morty do Dungeons and Dragons. Rick and Morty do these other things, but now this is kind of their big event, summer event comic, where the living embodiment of Universe C-137 is best friends with Rick and has decided that he wants to get married to the universal embodiment of the universe that they are currently in. Not Universe Prime, because that one's been destroyed when all Cronenberg.
Yeah, they're in C-131.
Yeah. So 137, 131 are going to get married, and because C-137 and Rick are bestest friends, buds ever, C-137 wants Rick to throw him a bachelor party, and of course Rick goes all out the way that Rick does at a bachelor party, and accidentally, quote, question mark, kills Dimension C-137, and now all of the other embodiments of all the other universes that were at the bachelor party now blame Rick for the death of Universe C-137, and so now any universe that they go to, Rick and Morty are being hunted down. That's kind of your hook for this big event that's spinning out into a lot of different things. Summer is getting her own couple of issues. I don't know if it's one shots or miniseries. Jerry's getting one. The daughters are getting a team up issue. Beth, yeah. And Rick and Morty are going to do something that they've never done before. And I think they're going to reboot Rick and Morty. It is a fantastic. I was really surprised at how much I like this. All the art by Jarrett Williams is on character. I don't think I've ever read a Rick and Morty comic where it hasn't been on character. Sometimes they get a little loose and cartoony with their depictions of the characters in the comic, but here they're pretty straight on, and it's really a lot of fun to see this. As I read this, if the Rick and Morty creators could get their act together and produce more than 8 episodes every 6 years, they could have probably turned this into a series-long arc, and it would probably be a lot of fun. Again, I'm only reading the first issue, the opening one-shot to this. But it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I thought the writing was on par with what this is Daniel Kibblesmith doing the writing. I thought it was on par with what you would see in the TV show. They did, I think, hold back a little bit because this is a comic book that's going to go onto comic shelves where maybe some younger audiences might have easier access to it. So even though there's a lot of drugs, even though there's a lot of sexual innuendo in this issue, it feels toned down from what you see in the television show, but still quite enjoyable overall. Like I said, it's out this week, $4.99 from Oni Press. I'm giving it 4 slices of meatloaf out of 5. If you'd like to pick this comic book up, or Captain America #1, or the next comic that we're going to be talking about, there is an Amazon affiliate link that you can click on, and you can buy those comics digitally, or you could buy them physically if you want. You're going to pay like $4 more to have them delivered to your door. But if you want to use that link to also buy yourself a blender, right now this week is Prime Week. So if you want to go and buy yourself, a really expensive telescope or a set of power tools to do manly things during the summertime, you can buy all of those things through the affiliate link that we have. A little bit comes back our way. I literally think it is like 1%, 1 to 3%, depending on the products that you buy. The more you buy, the more we get. So don't hold back this Prime holiday week and use those affiliate links. There you go. Rodrigo, I want to say you reviewed Benjamin #1 a few weeks ago, right? Okay. And I've yet to read this because the premise sounded really, really cool. But now Benjamin #2 comes out next week, and you have an early review for us of that.
Yes. Thank you, Oni Press, for an early review. Benjamin #2. So if you might recall, Benjamin #1 was the story of an author that died 40 years ago, and suddenly he's back. And he was a very trippy science fiction writer, and one that has a very specific voice. And I wish that I had read more sci-fi novels, because I know that they're probably going for someone specific. But to me, this kind of sounds like Hunter S. Thompson, even though it's clearly not meant to be. But it's that kind of like fast, like
Gonzo,
like fast,
crazy.
Gonzo, like I'm correct. This is what's happening, kind of thing. Florid descriptions, like it's its own thing. I know that they're doing someone, and I don't know who it is, but so they're like, okay, the Benjamin J. Carp, the main that said character, and his new sidekick Marcus, who's just like a person who was like basically the person who found him. They're like, Carp is like, they go through his books and they're like, I know what is happening. I know why I've been brought back. Somebody is copying the plot of one of my books, and it is a wackadoo premise. It's very out there. And so they follow this lead and they go somewhere. And in fact, there is this like super science cabal of scientists that are creating robots for this like very specific purpose. But then he kind of realizes that no, that's probably not it. And this is all kind of like a hallucination that I'm having, and the world starts to shift and change, and the scientists go away, but Marcus doesn't, right? So it's like, okay, you're like, if you're following along with Carp's ideas, you're like, okay, fine, whatever. This was all a hallucination that this very hallucinatory character is having. But why can Marcus move into the hallucination too, or is he a part of it? But why is he moving into the next one then? So it's weird. It's like very weird, but also like I want to see where they go with it. It's like because it's a comic that specifically references like these very weird stories from like the 60s, 70s, and maybe 80s, where like kind of the point was to not necessarily write the best story, although there's plenty of them that are good, but to come up with these like sort of like these premise-based stories, right? What if this? What if that? What if like everybody in the world was a robot and only one person was a real human? What if we lived on Mars? What if we come from Mars? Like sort of like this stuff. So jumping from premise to premise in the book because it's referencing these works feels quote unquote natural, even though it's still very weird. But now there's also sort of like this meta narrative thing going on of like on top of sort of just doing these things like at face value, we're also following a secondary mystery, which ties back to the primary of like, why is this guy even back? So I'm going to give it 3.5 slices of meatloaf. Art is very good. Again, gets very trippy. If you're interested in this sort of thing and the hallucinogenic aspect of it is like repelling you, I would say give it a try. It's very weird. I'm enjoying it. And I'm very curious to see where it goes.
That's very cool. Thank you very much for that, Rodrigo. I still will pick this up and read it in the future. And dear listeners, as I mentioned, if you want to pick these up, the Amazon affiliate link is there. Or if you would like to support us in another way and you want to get access to the Major Spoilers podcast pre-show, where we were talking about Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist versus 500 Days of Summer, you can go get that. When you become a silver level or higher, that's only $5 a month. $5 a month. That is not very much. You can be just like John Ayers, who became a silver patron this past week. Thank you, John. We'd love to give you a shout out and give you access to literally, when you become a silver level member, you unlock everything that is silver member related on the Patreon page. So that is literally hundreds of hours of pre-show content, a specific RSS feed that you can subscribe to, that every time we post something on there, if it's a podcast, it comes right to your podcast player. You get emails when we update things. If you're not familiar with Patreon by now, hello, welcome to 2025. We'll soon be talking about things from maybe your past 1978, where I'm sure they've never heard of Patreon for in just a moment. But we would love to give you a shout out, just like we gave John a shout out right here on the show. All you need to do is go over to patreon.com/major spoilers. Keep us going through to year 20 this week, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't remember, well, actually, technically last week, July 3rd, is our 19th birthday. 19 years that we have been doing Major Spoilers Entertainment, majorspoilers.com, all the podcasts, all of that stuff. And we want to be able to celebrate year 20 this time next year. And we can do it with your help. Patreon.com/major spoilers. So there's a big Superman movie coming out this week. A lot of people are talking about it. But what I don't see a lot of people talking about anymore is the time that Superman and Muhammad Ali got into a fight. And it was such a big fight that DC Comics in 1978 had to charge readers $2.50 for this book. Now, to be fair, this was a giant size magazine format. It was part of their new endeavor. In fact, if DC had its way, this would have been the formatting norm going forward for comic books, very much a magazine-sized comic book. And it had a magazine-style cover. And, of course, it featured Muhammad Ali, likeness rights of hundreds of other peoples through this. And, of course, Superman and Muhammad Ali fighting so that they can figure out who is going to take on the Scrubs. And I wonder, when did Scrubs become a derogatory term? Like you're playing basketball with your friends and you call your friend a scrub. Was that?
I mean, it had to have been after this, right? When did this come out?
1978.
1978. I want to say
you're just a scrub.
There was a time when it referred to like a runt in your farm litter, because I remember scrubs being something that my grandpa would talk about. So like if you had like a small horse or a small like cow, that was a scrub. It was one of the runts of the litter. So
that's probably where it comes from.
Yeah. And that,
like for farmers, it had always been a thing, but eventually people picked it up.
So what I'm seeing here is late 1960s used in high school sports to refer to players with lesser abilities. So yeah. So before this, I bring it up because the bad people in this thing, the aliens who are trying to take over the Earth, basically putting Earth on the scales to determine whether Earth should be destroyed or whether it should live. The alien race is called Scrubs. And so I was like, well, that's kind of weird. That's kind of weird to do that.
But very funny.
Yes, but very funny and fitting,
right? Especially if you see what they're about, right? They're like these like very like they're like, oh, we're gonna put you through like the sports challenge to see who's the best, and they're the Scrubs, right?
Yeah. The other thing about
I do love the fact that the leader of the Scrub is drawn exactly the same way that Neil Adams draws Ra's al Ghul. So you can think, hey,
isn't his
these
name
are like weird
or something?
Immortal guys from the future.
What's his name? Like Rat Scrub,
oh, gosh.
the leader of the group.
Rat Scrub. I'm pretty sure that was the name of the group that played the Beverly Hillbillies.
So Neil Adams.
I thought that was that like rat that was driving and its eyes pop out.
Oh yeah. Rat Fink. Yeah. So Neil Adams is the artist in this, and this is like peak Neil Adams in here. The opening splash page where Lois and Jimmy and Clark are walking down New York City, or Metropolis, sorry. And it's just filled with people and detail and everything. You can just look at this double page spread for hours and it just looks fantastic. And then you're going to be like, what? I could get 2 oranges for 38 cents. Guava was 28 cents. Holy cow. Look at the prices and how they've changed. Yeah, it's quite different than the $5 you're going to pay today for a guava.
Well, and Neil spent like 3 years drawing this thing.
Oh, really?
It was a big production. It was a massive thing. And what's most interesting to me is you say this is peak Neil. I feel like this is actually the point where for Neil, it is kind of all downhill. And I say that, I don't say that to be mean. I say that to be like, first of all, this is Neil drawing on massive, massive boards, because the Treasury size comics are as wide as a standard book is tall. So they're like 11 inches wide and 37 inches tall. I don't even remember anymore. There was a time I could tell you. Right now I'm old. But It really is just every single page, every single panel is so bizarre and creative. And there's a page where Ali is teaching Superman his footwork. And you're like, oh, there's no backgrounds. There don't need to be backgrounds. This is the closest I've ever seen an individual page come to showing me actual motion that I've seen. And it's just beautifully done. You can almost hear, well, actually, you can hear Ali if you've ever heard his voice, but you can see him moving through the page. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like I said, peak Neil Adams. Just the art in here, just the ability to draw Muhammad Ali. He must have had a ton of references for this.
Yeah.
Again and again and again and again.
Yeah, you get Muhammad Ali from every angle too. Mm-hmm. There's like low angle shots, like you see him like looking up to see Superman. Like every angle that his face could be drawn in is in this comic.
Yeah.
Yep. Different expressions.
Yeah.
He's confused. He's dubious. He's,
angry at the
anybody
end.
Can. Yeah, you can do the smile, I'm sure. You can do the yelling, the braggadocio. But the point where he's like looking at the alien and he's kind of like, what the heck is this schmuck up to? That moment really would be hard to draw. You can draw the face, but can you make it say anything you want? And that's
Yeah, it's really from the art is just fantastic in this. So the basic premise, ladies and gentlemen, is like I said, the Scrubs have come to Earth to put the Earth on the scales to decide whether it's too violent and should be destroyed, or if it is honorable and should be able to live. And in order to do this, they're taking Earth's greatest champion, and they're going to pit them against the Scrubs' greatest champion. And of course, Muhammad Ali is like, well, I'm the greatest. And again, this is very time specific. This is the equivalent of Michael Jordan in Space Jam kind of thing, right? And Superman's like, yeah, but I'm Superman. I am a citizen of every nation on the planet because the UN has chartered me in because, and they point out that Superman, you're an illegal immigrant to this country. And he's like, yeah, but I'm here now. Everybody accepts me as an Earthling. And so in order to decide who's going to go up against the Scrubs, Superman and Muhammad Ali have to get in the ring together and fight. They have 24 hours to prepare. Now, a lot of people out there listening, probably not the people that are complaining about the new movie, but a lot of people are listening are probably like, how does that make any sense? How is Muhammad Ali even stand a chance against Superman, who in this very book stops a giant tidal wave of three giant, not only does he stop 3 missiles coming in that are going to destroy a island, he also stops a tidal wave from destroying cities all over the world. How does Muhammad Ali stand a chance against this Superman? And the answer, dear listener, is red sun. The Scrubs' homeworld is under a red sun, and in order to train, Superman takes Muhammad Ali into another dimension with a red sun so that they can train. And 1 minute of our time is like an hour of this pocket universe time. And of course, the Scrubs are like, you're cheating. But they get to train. And that's where that great sequence where Muhammad Ali is in all the different poses comes from. Ultimately, Muhammad Ali defeats Superman. Gasp. But did he really? You got to believe
he refuses to KO Superman, but he defeats the heck out of him.
You got to believe that Superman and Muhammad Ali actually wouldn't let the story end right there. Would you? Because these two are the greatest. And of course, they have teamed up for a secret plan where Superman must put on a blackface and stop the alien attack of Hunya. And of course,
like, yo, I run this with my other bro all the time.
Yeah.
We run this scam all the time on the baddies.
Yep. And then everybody sees that, hey, the Scrubs are not honorable and the Earth people are honorable. And so Earth is saved thanks to Muhammad Ali, the greatest. And Jimmy Olsen, who does a pretty good job at being Howard Cosell.
Jimmy Olsen as Howard Cosell. And you do have to remember the most important bit of this story. The champ figures out why Clark Kent and Superman are never in the same room at the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though Lois Lane's dating one of them and working with the other 9 hours a day and can't put X and Y together. So that right there, that's why he's the greatest. He figured it out.
Yeah.
So, Rodrigo, have you ever read this before? Have you ever read this issue before?
I had a long time ago. I think I found a shrunken version at a library. Actually, I might have read the magazine version. I think that's what it was. I found the magazine version. I sat at the library and read it, but I don't think I read the whole thing.
It is pretty long. I mean, it's how many pages? It's like 50 pages, something like that.
72
pages of action in this.
Yeah.
Of Neil Adams stuff. There are a couple of things that I find very interesting about this, and I don't know if this is why we ended up with these things later on, but the Scrubs do talk about Hunya, their greatest warrior, who has been genetically grown or something to be their greatest warrior. It almost feels like when we get to Doomsday, that Hunya is the reason why they were like, hey, what could we do to create something that could take down Superman? Hey, remember Hunya? Oh yeah, that should be our inspiration for Doomsday. Also, where you have a whole alien armada coming to Earth because they're wondering if Earth is too violent, feels like something that would come out, a decade later in the pages of Invasion.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder if this has plants the seeds for those two things later down the road.
I feel like the Invasion thing definitely is influenced by this. With Hunya, I feel like this may be two different applications of kind of a similar sort of, creative process, because Hunya is big and too broad and overbalanced, and he just kind of looks like weird and muscular and creepy. You can kind of see that, going back to, if you want to, call out Basil Wolverton, and you go back to his stories of Powerhouse Pepper, where you have the character who's so thick and so muscular and so strong. Popeye's kind of the same thing. I feel like with Doomsday and Hunya, we're seeing new iterations.
But
kind of that.
But specifically, you're talking about the physical description of Hunya, but the scrub leader also says Hunya was born in a laboratory. He was molded by our scientists to be the perfect warrior. He has the toughest skin of any humanoid in the universe. And so that's very much like exactly what, Doomsday is. So, yeah, it's interesting. This is a fascinating book on a number of different levels. Not only do you have Muhammad Ali in a comic book, but again, Muhammad Ali was in cartoon series and a bunch of other things throughout his life, made for TV movies. So he is very much a media personality. It's fun to see him in here. And I'm sure he was paid a lot of money for his likeness rights, but to see the cameos by all of the other people, not just on the cover, because the cover has 180 people that are making cameos on here, including Jimmy Carter, the Jackson 5, Welcome Back Carter people, or Cotter people, and a whole lot more. But just the fact that, like you said, Howard Cosell appears in a panel because Jimmy is the one that's doing the announcing and Howard isn't. And it's just interesting to see how many people from the 1970s that they were able to pack into the pages of this comic.
It's fun to see Don King hanging out with Lex Luthor, two guys who kind of have similar MOs and different approaches to hair, but very in the long run. But I also think that there's something here that fascinates me. This is 1978. This is meant to be a big comic, not just a big comic, but a big comic event. This is something that was advertised outside of the comic book joints. I don't think it made it to television, but you could see things in the newspaper. You could see book selling places going Muhammad Ali versus Superman, and this is the point where we're kind of looking at DC, which only 2 years earlier gave us Tyrock, which is one of their very first black superheroes. We're like 6 months out of Black Lightning, who is really their first black lead character, their first solo hero. There were maybe a handful of black characters in the DC universe. And of those, I think 3 of them were Teen Titans. And you have a point where this is the biggest book in the world, and it's Superman and a person of color. And it's a huge, cultural push, but I think it's also a cultural shift. And it really is fascinating to me to look at it and say, this comic was a big deal at a time when comics were still kind of a big deal. So this was the biggest of big deals at a time when, Superman
you just had Superman
the
movie coming out or just out.
Yeah. Yep. Wonder Woman is on TV. In a lot of ways, it's a precursor of that modern every other thing is a superhero movie, because Spider-Man's on TV, the Hulk's on TV, Wonder Woman's on TV, Batman is everywhere, but he doesn't have a movie yet. But, Saturday morning cartoons in 1978 were a good 50% superheroes. And I know that because I was 7, and I remember all of them because I was 7, but also because I'm Matthew. And this book is really, to me, one of those moments where you kind of forget this is a big deal. This is like a cultural touch point, because this is a person who only 10 years before was being mocked on the floor of the American Congress for being trying to desert in Vietnam or some such nonsense. Being
conscientious objector.
Yeah, being forced into military service. There was a time when you couldn't say Muhammad Ali or Cassius Clay without somebody telling you, something negative about him. And 1978, one of the biggest, I think, this is a celebrity in the traditional old school sense, not in the I was on 2 seasons of something on MTV sense we have today, but this is a person that all around the world, people know this man. He's standing toe to toe with Superman. He wins a fight with Superman. And I feel like even nerds, and God love us, we are an interesting breed. Even nerds reading this in 78 and seeing how this plays out and seeing Ali win that fight. And I say win in quotes. I also say fight in quotes. I don't feel like there's going to be people going, the 1978 equivalent of whatever this is too woke is. I feel like this is something where you're going to walk away from this and go, wow, that was a big deal. That was like Star Wars, cool, awesome.
I mean, back then they would just use racial slurs.
Yeah.
True.
That's
true.
Yeah. Muhammad Ali does beat the bad guy, because what Superman is doing while he has been defeated is he goes out and he's fighting the Scrub Armada, and turning them back, and then showing the universe that the Scrubs they're not honorable or trusted. But Muhammad Ali definitely beats Kunya quite heartily, and it's great to see those pages come alive to an extent, just in how dynamic Neil Adams' art is in every single page. It's fascinating to look at. But yes, in 1978 there would have been different names.
And
going on in
the bottom half of page 58 is just I love what I think of as the platonic ideal of Superman. I'm not a Superman connoisseur. I'm not a Superman reader. I by no means do I know as much as a Mark Waid or a Calamity John, but I look at that page, that half page, and I'm just like, this is what Superman does. This is what Superman is. If you want to stop an alien invasion, you need Superman. And it's just such a beautiful page that, it's mean for me to say that it's all downhill for Neil from here. And I get that, but it is. You're never going to see this kind of draftsmanship again. And again, that's one of the things where everybody has their moment. And I feel like this is the shining crowning achievement that DC put together. Whoever said, what we need Neil on this, they were absolutely right.
My favorite panel is on page 6, where he's doing his changing act, where he's like, this looks like a job for Superman. If you look at that panel, you can almost see this as a Tim Sale drawing. If you look, and it's really cool to see that. And I like that. There's so much. The double page splashes where Superman is witnessing things that kind of like that not quite diver's pose or the trapeze pose that he puts Superman in when he's flying is always very cool. But just the fact when Muhammad Ali and Superman are fighting in the ring, always great. It looks great. It is. I think there's one where Lois is screaming, "Please stop that man! You're going to kill the man that I love!" And it's like this very Rocky to an extent in this. I think I know that the Rocky movie takes place during Christmas, but what's his name in the movie? Plays it up as as a almost
Apollo
like
Creed.
Apollo Creed plays it up almost like it's an Independence Day kind of thing. I'm glad I got to read this over the July 4th holiday. I think that this should be a yearly read where every July 4th you sit down and you watch Superman and Muhammad Ali get into the ring and punch each other to save the world. It's kind of like one of those event kind of things that happen each year.
Yeah, it is.
Frederick, you've been quiet for a little bit. Some thoughts. What's going through your head right now?
Some thoughts. This is weird. I enjoyed it a lot, but it's weird because Muhammad Ali is a real person and a real person with huge cultural cash, obviously to this day, but particularly at that point in time, right? So there's like some very weird stuff in this book because of that. Like, first off, we kind of went over it, is like, did Superman take a fall? Which is weird both for like I can see that because they're like, well, let's not have either one of them beat the other one. I think what they're going for is he does beat Superman, but Superman then goes out and does this thing, but it really feels like Superman just took a fall. Another one is that obviously Muhammad Ali is like a huge braggart, right? Like that's his thing, that's his persona. So when the alien comes down and he's like, hey, I need somebody to fight for Earth because I'm going to destroy you guys, he starts doing that and Superman gets in on it. Superman's like, well, I have superpowers and I can shoot lasers from and like, it's weird because Superman is a very humble character. So putting Superman there like was very weird to me, even though when he's not talking to anybody, he's constantly telling us that stuff in the text boxes, right? Or in like thought bubbles. He's always like, are we using my super lasers? I will do this, right? But it's like hearing him out loud say that to people seems very weird. It's weird that this is a real person that exists with Superman, who is very, very not a real person. And like the other thing that is really weird is that with no like introduction or setup ahead of time, when the final fight comes up, the Greek goddess Athena shows up.
Yeah, that was really weird, right? But she wants to be the referee. She wants to make sure it's a fair fight.
Sure.
And the aliens are like, well, we also worship her as something else, so sure, right? And I was like, did they get that? Did Neil and O'Neill get that far into the comic? And we're like, oh snap! How are we gonna have this be like an impartial fight? It's like, we'll just have Athena show up. It's like, oh, yeah, of course. It's just so weird because, if you're a DC Comics reader, then it doesn't matter. Like, stuff like this happens all the time in the comics. But if you're someone who was, like, lured in because you love Muhammad Ali and because you love Superman culturally, which a lot of people do.
Yeah.
And then you're reading through this, and then all of a sudden Athena shows up. I can only imagine that you were like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah. Matthew, flip to page 8 really quick.
Flip to page 8.
So I wonder if the reason why Athena shows up is because they didn't want to put Wonder Woman as the referee. They're trying to make this a Superman book, but if you put Wonder Woman or Batman, who technically is on the cover of the issue, if you put them in the book, then that dilutes the story that you're trying to tell about Superman, who is still one of the best most recognized characters at DC Comics. Going back to the words and the usage, the talk between Superman and Muhammad Ali, here is Superman at the bottom of page 8. If anyone should mix with these extraterrestrial clowns, it should be me. You may be the best human scrapper, but I'm superhuman. Matthew can read the Muhammad Ali part.
Right, but that's exactly why you shouldn't. They're talking about an Earthman, and you were born on Krypton.
Come
I am
on.
not going to attempt
I'm naturalized Earthman. I've been granted citizenship on every nation in the UN.
Hey, why are we arguing? He's the bad guy.
I think that is kind of weird, Rodrigo, where you do have, and if you know Muhammad Ali and you know that Muhammad Ali's voice when you're reading this, and I would say that anybody who knows who Muhammad Ali has watched anything about Muhammad Ali has heard him with Howard Cosell talking about
can do a bad Muhammad Ali. Yeah, we can all do it.
Yeah. You can hear him talking, and it does sound weird where Superman is trying to be braggadocious, and it just comes off as a little strange.
It's super weird. And it's like, it is kind of like, right, in comics, if you're going to have two characters cross over, you want to see something like that, right? Nowadays, it's almost been codified, right? Where it's like, it's the Power Rangers and the Ninja Turtles. So, of course, you want to mutate the Power Rangers and give Power Ranger suits to the Turtles, right? Obviously, you want to do that. Back then, maybe it was a little bit more nebulous, but that's what they're doing. They're putting later on, Muhammad Ali is going to be fighting aliens in space. Right now, they're putting Superman into the context that Muhammad Ali exists. And it's weird not because Superman is an alien and has superpowers, but because Superman is like a little Boy Scout, right? In the best possible way. But yeah, he's not boisterous like that. So it's weird to see him do that.
To be fair, again, we have seen Superman over the years if you remember superdickery.com from back in the day. I don't think that website exists anymore, but it was just nothing but pages and panels and covers from Superman comics where he's being a dick, like literally, I am the king and you must all bow down to me or I will destroy you. By the way, curfew is at 8:00 and everyone's like, yes, Master Superman, we'll do whatever you say.
Why has Superman turned us all into cavemen?
Yes. Why does Superman have a giant ant head? Please bring me sugar now. I demand it. It's just really interesting for people to always think that Superman is this kind-hearted person, but that's not necessarily the case where Superman does lose his temper. And I think that that's important also to talk about is that Superman is, he's only human. But he is somebody that has human emotions and has those kind of reactions to things. So I get where you're coming from, Rodrigo, that it does seem weird that Superman would be arguing with Muhammad Ali instead of just saying, sit down and shut up. I'm Superman. It does feel weird, but it's not out of Superman's.
Right. There are so many versions of Superman that this could be one of them. And maybe this was somewhat like the version of Superman that existed then. It's just weird to me because with these characters, you have to kind of have a headcanon, right? It's like, so when I was step into this, I'm thinking of like super Boy Scout Superman, like always does the right thing, flies to the sun to clean his cape kind of stuff, like very powerful, very clean cut, very like do the right thing, very patriarchal and like, yay, America. Like, so not all necessarily super positive qualities, but that's what I think of. So maybe at this time, Superman was a little bit more, I don't know, like a little bit more petulant or would call somebody like he calls them like chumps, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like, and this is to me that still doesn't sound right, but maybe there was a time when Superman would call someone a chump.
This is Bronze Age Superman. I don't know if you guys remember. I swear we reviewed it. The point where Superman no longer had to worry about kryptonite, circa 73 or 74. In Action Comics 233, they changed things up and they tried to make Clark more hip and made him a TV.
That's when he moved over to WGBS, which is kind of the whole point of this. They're out trying to get a story for the TV news, not the Daily Planet.
Right. He's no longer wearing the blue suit with the hat everywhere. They were really trying to give Superman kind of an everyman edge. And a lot of and I see it too, a lot of what we're describing is more of the new Earth, the post-crisis, post-87 Superman. Sure. But some of it has been, kind of retroactively attributed. We're at a point right here where we're kind of seeing a little bit of Silver Age Superman, who was the super D word, and a little bit of Bronze Age Superman, who would get in and mix it up and tell people, hey, stop it, you're a schmuck. But I think he did say schmuck once. I'm sure he did. But you do also have that question of when you are faced with a Muhammad Ali and you are Superman, do you feel like you need to defend yourself, to state your resume, to remind people, I'm awesome too? And I kind of like that bit where Ali starts really selling his thing. They rank me with the greatest, with Joe Louis, with Gene Tunney, with Jack Dempsey. He goes through his whole thing, and Superman's like, hey, wait a minute, I'm here too. I got a cool cape. It really feels like he's so good at being his own hype man that he actually forces Superman to come up to his level.
It feels that way, and I feel like it feels like Superman comes up short.
He does.
Because he just comes right back, right? And maybe that's all part of what the comic is getting at in general. Like, the winner here is Muhammad Ali. Like, there's a comic about how cool Muhammad Ali is, and also his pal Superman.
He is so cool. The Muhammad Ali is so great that he can even beat Superman. I think that's kind of, I don't know if I would say that's the point of the story, but I think you're in that right direction if you say that this was basically a way to hype Muhammad Ali in comic book form for a wider audience. Although Muhammad Ali was everywhere in '78. So
if you're trying to pull people in by putting Muhammad Ali in your comic, right, you're not just going to punk him out. Right. So you kind of need him to win. Do you guys
the Rock sequence or the Rock subclause where up until maybe in an upcoming film, the Rock has it in his clause that he can't be beaten.
He can't lose.
He's got it. He can't lose a fight.
Yeah. And The Rock may be the closest thing that we have in the modern parlance to kind of what Muhammad Ali kind of was in 1978. And even then, I feel like there's a difference in that The Rock is known primarily as an athlete, but a fake fighter, someone who's not actually out there, punching people. He's someone who makes it look good when he doesn't punch people. And even then, there's that question of, what if he had to be in a real fight? We kind of know what would happen if there were a real fight with Muhammad Ali.
So, Matthew, you were talking about the WGBS thing. You may be referring to, I think it was the first issue of these giant-sized DC comics where Superman and the Amazing Spider-Man teamed up, and that
was the first Marvel DC crossover.
Yeah, and that was also part of the giant. That was also a 250 giant book as well. And we did review that on the show. But I'm wondering if we did do a updated version of Superman versus Muhammad Ali, would it be Superman versus The Rock?
If by updated you mean if we did this in like exactly 1999, maybe.
I was going to say 2001.
Yeah, probably when he was just coming out of the WWE, when he was like at his like absolute, where he was like new and hot in the
2004
in the pop culture sense, but also, he's a good looking guy. Because if you did it now, The Rock doesn't have that level of cachet anymore. And even then, kind of he didn't, because media was already starting to splinter into 1,000 things, right? Like when Muhammad Ali was the thing, people actually cared about boxing. Like, what is a boxer that would be like that now? There probably is.
I mean,
there probably is a boxer.
I don't think it wouldn't be Conor McGregor.
Like, people would be like, oh, it would definitely be, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. or whatever. But we don't know, because we don't go looking for boxing.
It would probably be a UFC person.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, is like, you don't have to know a UFC person or a singer or a TV show or an actor or whatever anymore. You can exist completely separate from certain bits of media, and unless you have like kids or coworkers or your job involves it, you don't have to find out who any of these people are. So it's very difficult now to be like, is there an athlete that is like this? And maybe the closest is when like an Olympic athlete really like punches through, like maybe if they did like Usain Bolt versus the Flash or something like that. But again, Usain Bolt is old news, right? It's like, we remember that, but he hasn't been an Olympian. Well, I guess maybe you're always an Olympian, but he hasn't competed in a long time.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I was going to say Gabby Douglas versus Superman, but that's 10 years ago, 12 years ago now. I don't know. We're not young.
It might just be The Rock, just for, because everybody still knows The Rock. They still know him as a person who is very buff and very strong, and whatever people think of wrestling, there's still a huge level of athleticism that goes into a lot of that. If we're trying to make that 1-to-1 equation, it might be The Rock. I don't think John Cena would be the one to be in there.
No,
it would be funny. It would be funny to see Superman take on the Undertaker.
Well, I was gonna say, if they did Superman versus The Rock, like John Cena would be in it, and he would keep trying to jump in and get himself involved.
Superman's breath would keep blowing him out of the ring.
Yeah, or like somebody else, like just like Batman, just keeps like putting him in a chokehold and dragging him out of the ring or whatever.
Like, what about
so he doesn't interfere?
Lionel Messi versus Batman? Is that like a thing?
Sure.
I don't know versus sports.
Messi would, again, that would probably be maybe better like a Nightwing, or a Nightwing probably would be a better competitor with Messi.
Okay. Cristiano Ronaldo versus The Thing.
Did you guys hear about Cristiano Ronaldo being in a video game? So recently, I don't know if you guys know the game franchise Fatal Fury. It had a big comeback this year, or maybe at the end of last year. Pretty sure it was this year. And they've been releasing new DLC characters. And one of the DLC characters is Cristiano Ronaldo.
Wow.
So if you want to see Cristiano Ronaldo fight superhuman level fighters, because obviously all these guys can shoot fireballs and generate lightning and do stuff like that, you can look up Fatal Fury, City of the Wolves. Although a lot of people are upset about this. A lot of people don't like that there's like a real person in their peanut butter.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, maybe everybody loved Muhammad Ali back then, but I wonder if there were people who were like, I really hate that here is Muhammad Ali mixing it up with my favoriteest character, Superman.
There were definitely people that were on that side of the fence.
There definitely were. And I feel like it's not just the lack of a monoculture that means that we don't have a Muhammad Ali anymore. I think that there's also that level of believing the hype, for lack of a better word. When people talk about, like, okay, so local example, Patrick Mahomes, very, very good football quarterback, has been to the Super Bowl like 4 times out of the last 5 and won 3 of those. There are people and in my experience, and I don't talk football, when this comes up, they're like, it's all rigged. It's all rigged. None of that's real. And it's the argument that I kept having in the 90s about WWE. It's all rigged. None of that's real. None of that matters. I feel like it's not just the monoculture to where we don't have someone at that level. It's we don't think about these characters in that way anymore. We don't think about these real people as larger than life characters in sporting terms anymore.
And that is the thing. Like, The Rock is a character, right?
Yeah.
So it makes sense to have The Rock versus Superman if The Rock is like the invincible tough guy that The Rock that Dwayne Johnson played on the WWE. If you were like specifically Dwayne Johnson versus Superman, that does kind of start to become something else.
Yeah. Hey, I know the easiest way to settle this. We need our listeners right now. You listening? We need you to head over to our Discord server. You can join absolutely free. There's a bunch. This last week, I've been spending a little bit more time in the Discord just because I've had a little bit more downtime. And there's just some wonderful people and wonderful conversations that are going on over there. But what I want everybody to do is jump into the Major Spoilers podcast channel over on our Discord server. And I want you to let us know, who would Superman be fighting in a modern version of Superman versus Muhammad Ali? Maybe you have somebody better than the ones that we have suggested. Maybe you agree with one of our picks and think that would be the perfect update to that tale, and just go do it. Just join the community, because in this day and age where there is so much hate and vitriol going on, so many scrubs, Rodrigo, who are on the Twitter and the blue skis, so many scrubs out there. We don't have any scrubs over on our Discord server. They're all great people, and you're going to make some friends, and you're going to have interesting conversations. You're going to laugh, love, eat, whatever else, smile, dream, whatever else goes into those phrases. John Paul, George, and Ringo. You can have all that over on our Major Spoilers Discord server that you can join right now. So, bottom line, Matthew, on this book.
I love this comic. I read this comic when I was 9. I've read this comic periodically since. I love this comic. This is just a quintessential comic experience for me. This is what some people say a Star Wars is. This is big, giant, massive widescreen storytelling, larger than life characters. One of them, mostly a real person. But this is the only place that you're going to be able to see Mayor Ed Koch and the Sweat Hogs hanging out in the same place as Batman.
Rodrigo, final thoughts from you.
Yeah. So in the past, I've talked about like when a comic book, even if it's not necessarily your thing, if you want to understand the history of comic books, certain comics are important. This one is certainly very important. And I think you guys really started to get close to something that I hadn't thought about, which is that it's hugely influential, right? I always saw this as this like weird thing that happened that was very interesting because of the time period when it came out and because it's like formally very good. But also, yeah, it's interesting to see who knows who was impacted by this comic and in what ways. Everybody read this, right? It was like a huge deal when it came out. So definitely everybody who was into comics has some nugget of Superman versus Muhammad Ali somewhere in their brain. And it's interesting to see where it comes up.
Yeah, definitely. For me, this is, like I said earlier, I want to read this comic every year on the 4th of July. If you can get a physical copy, I would try to encourage you to try to get a physical copy. There is a deluxe version that has a lot of back matter in it, including some of the makings of. You get to see some of the early art and some more behind the scenes stories, although most of that can also be found over on the wiki page for this title. But I think this is something that everybody should have in their collection, if for nothing else, to just pull out to your friends and say, you want to see something really weird? Check out this comic where Superman and Muhammad Ali fought. If for nothing else, just pull that out to show people. Because I think once they crack it open and start reading it, they'll really be surprised at how good of a story it is. Plus, fantastic art from Neil Adams. Okay, that is where we're going to wrap it up this week. Thank you so much for listening. If you found some value in this show, we would love for you to give a little something back to us by heading over to our Patreon page, patreon.com/Major Spoilers. We have monthly, we have yearly subscriptions. We have subscriptions that you can sign up for regardless of the size of your pocketbook. Heck, you can even sign up for free. See, pocketbook, Rodrigo, would be a term you would use a lot in the 70s. Still.
Sure.
So you can go over to patreon.com/Major Spoilers and find out more. Next week on the show, we've got a little bit of time before the Fantastic Four movie comes out. So why don't we talk about X-Men next time on the Major Spoilers podcast? Why? Because we know that you love comics, and we do too, and we will talk with you soon.
Fat the X-ray vision of a Superman. I could save a few bucks and stand around and read through the covers of the comics on the stand. But although every other page would be backwards, I suppose I could still read the evens and the odds. Well, I don't know. Guess I haven't thought this all the way through. Plus, as soon as the comic book store guy knew, they kicked my butt out on the corner. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Think about a better way. If I was hulking green or gray, I could just bust through that brick wall, take their comic books away. But then the little meat would deal with all the tanks and bombs and guns. Have you ever tried to read a series with all that going on? Guess I need to rethink this plan. How would I back and board my comics with such huge hands? Guess I already told ya. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. If I'm stark raving rich like a man of iron, I might not be surprised to find that I might actually have the heart cold to follow an entire storyline. But would I really even need to read up on all those escapades? I mean, who needs such distractions when your sister's such a babe? But the downside is such a beast, being shot up in a fun, being in the Middle East with a gang sign throwing soldier. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. Whoa, 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 whoa. What a major spoiler.
This podcast is copyright 2025 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.